And I got interrupted again. My phone storage capacity got full. That is not correct. That is not the right way to say it. Anyway, yeah, control. Trying to control your environment. And so, for me, a really interesting way to look at this, a moment that really struck home with me was, thinking about one of the millions of things that have been triggers, um, obsessional thoughts of mine, and then compulsions that followed from that is symmetry. And so you may have noticed I've got eyeliner on one eye today and not the other, and that is very difficult for me to handle. One thing that traditionally was really, really hard for me, especially at various points in my life when I was already super stressed out, was I would tie and retie my shoelaces over and over and over until they felt like they were the exact same tightness from foot to foot. And I had no idea. I had OCD at this point in time when it was really the worst. And it got so bad, I couldn't understand. I felt like I keep tying them. I feel like that should be bringing me closer and closer to feeling like I got it right. And the more I would do it, the more I would, now I see, the more I would just, attune myself to the possibility that it didn't feel right. And so every effort to decrease my doubt, my uncertainty, my discomfort would just increase the chances that I would feel doubt, that I would feel like I needed to correct something, that I would feel like I could still do something to make it better. It got so bad that I stopped wearing shoes with laces altogether because I couldn't handle the anxiety that it caused me, and I couldn't get out the door in time. A lot of the time I was just tying them over and over and over. But when I stopped wearing shoes with laces and started just wearing slip-ons, it didn't bother me anymore, of course, because I didn't have the option to do something myself. I didn't have the option to do something about it. When you don't have that possibility, you don't have that kind of control over a situation, it sort of becomes irrelevant. In a slightly similar way, I also realized that my probably the biggest obsession that I have had in my life that has been the most detrimental to my life, and there have been many, but this one has sort of interrupted me in more ways than everything else, and more consistently, has been with sleep. I have suffered from chronic insomnia really, really bad since I was 12, possibly before that, but it was around the age of 12 that my mother noticed anyway that I really wasn't sleeping. And yeah, that is something I spent a lot of time trying to figure out. I went to various doctors. Whole long story I don't need to get into right now, but basically with the shoe tying thing, I am drawing an analogy here because there were 3 points in my life prior to starting all of this OCD recovery discovery stuff where I actually slept pretty well. And each of these 3 times, it was only for about a week or 2 weeks in one case. But still, for me, that was just unheard of, to sleep well for a week. So naturally, not realizing what the issue was and what I was up against, I was making charts and I was trying to find the common denominator in all of these 3 situations, and I was cross-referencing things and trying to figure out, get to the bottom of it. And yes, I see now how unhealthy that was and how much worse it made everything, but at the time, of course, I thought this makes sense. This is the logical way to go about it. And I never could figure out what the common denominator was, needless to say, but now I recognize that it was the factor of control. In all 3 of these situations, I was outside of my own home, but beyond that, I was not in a setting where I felt I had the ability to alter my surroundings to make things more comfortable for me. So one of these times was I was in Mexico living with a host family while doing like a study abroad thing. Two other times where, similar situations where it's like, I don't feel comfortable asking the people I'm staying with if I can cover up the windows and make everything super dark, or, there's no possibility of finding a comfortable mattress, or, any number of things that I cannot do. I don't have control over it. And so since I know I literally cannot do anything about this, my mind says, okay, fine. And that to me was a huge revelation. So getting back to, how this can be applied to everyday life now in terms of thinking about the ways that control ends up being really, really detrimental to our efforts, I thought, well, gosh, on the home front now, I feel comfortable changing things and rearranging things and doing things the way I like it, but that's bad for me. So in an effort to sort of relinquish some of that control, I decided to ask my husband if he would be willing to basically, I said, hey, for a week, could you do me a favor and you take control as much as possible in whatever ways you can. Whenever, especially it seems like I have a preference about something, you tell me no, do it the other way. And that could be as small as, like brush your teeth with your other hand, or, like I have glasses that I really don't like wearing. That was a huge exposure for me. So at this point, he told me a couple of times, today you're wearing your glasses, and this is unexpected. I have no say in the matter. It's not something I'm choosing to do, because sometimes when you're doing ERP, you're obviously pushing yourself really hard, but at the same time, there is that factor of you're in control of sort of when to do your homework and how to do your homework and all of that, and that's wonderful. But I just felt like I really want to try and work on this factor of feeling out of control, feeling like I can't, have my environment just the way I like it, knowing that that would be super healthy for me. And then it was really interesting. What happened with that experiment was that my husband sort of did a couple things the first day, and that was really good and super helpful, raised my anxiety, excellent experiences. But then he kind of forgot, or, just got busy. And so I had asked him to do this as much as possible for a week. And by like day 3, he hadn't really done anything after the first day. And I started feeling annoyed and sort of anxious about that. I immediately realized, great, this is another opportunity actually to say, because he's not doing what I wanted him to do. So here's an opportunity to say, okay, this isn't going the way I wanted it to go. Now sit with that feeling, feel how uncomfortable it is, and don't remind him. Don't complain to him. Don't pester him about, I thought you were going to help me. Have you forgotten all these things? And I failed. Long story short, I ended up asking him if he'd forgotten and said, look, could you please, I really wanted some help with this. And then I realized, especially in retrospect, that the biggest lesson from that experience was that it's great to ask people for help with this, and absolutely your partners, your family, if they can get on board with you and really help in your recovery, that is ideal. But do not rely on that, because you are the only person who is able to actually make you recover and make you do this stuff. So I decided then that if I really want to try and impose some sort of uncertainty and feelings of not having control over things, that I could do that in a way myself where it still wouldn't be totally a matter of like me deciding when to do something and how to do something. So I just wanted to share this fun little thing. And I also say fun because that's another thing I've been forgetting recently. When I first started doing ERP, it was super, super difficult and horrible and all the things you hear if you haven't experienced them yet. But at the same time, it also was really fun and it was really empowering. And it did get to that point where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm excited to feel this anxiety. I'm excited for the next challenge. And that was such a helpful thing for me to get through that first really, really difficult experience with ERP. And then things got under control a lot more and I felt a lot more equipped to handle this. And then when the intrusive thoughts came crashing back in after a while, unfortunately, I had a really hard time with that because I wasn't in that headspace of, oh, cool, here's another opportunity. It was like, oh, shit, I thought that I was doing much better with this stuff, and now it's here again, and this is really inconvenient. It's always inconvenient. The timing's always terrible. It's always, when you're doing something important or, whatever the case may be. So needless to say, I did not welcome it back in. I did not say, oh, good, here's another opportunity to keep plugging along with this stuff. I was like, damn, I don't want to do this again. So to try and impose more of a sense of this can be fun, this should be fun, there's no need for this to be excruciatingly awful. And in fact, looking at it that way is just going to make it harder. I decided to make a little game. So I built myself, basically, it's a cube. I will roll like a die. Yes. Singular of dice, die. Re-record this, get it straight. On which I wrote 6 things that are basically the condensed versions of my kind of basic underlying fears and triggers at this point in my life, and the things that really have been triggering for me for many, many years in some form or another. And every single day, I am going to get up and I'm going to roll this die, and whatever it lands on, that is my homework for the day. So I have, obviously I am doing this, I have control over it, but I don't have control over what it's going to say. I don't know, and I have to just do it. And then it's a game. I mean, you gotta welcome this stuff in. You gotta say,